Hey y'all, thanks so much for joining me for part 4 of our Objectives and Key Results series. Today, we're going to be talking about aligning objectives and key results throughout your organization. Before we dive into that, I just want to share a quick reminder of where we've come from. So far, we've talked about what is an objective and key result, how to write effective OKRs, how to measure OKRs, collect data for your key results. So today we're talking about alignment, and then we are going to have one more video where we're talking about how to implement OKRs throughout your organization, including using them as a tool to say no to less important priorities. So without further ado, let's dive into the topic. How do we use OKRs to really build some alignment across and throughout our teams in terms of the goals and objectives that we're working towards? First, know that there are two flavors of how you draft an OKR, and that is sort of a top-down draft and a bottom-up draft. So what do we mean by this? A top-down objective and key result is essentially an objective and then a related set of key results that logically follows from some OKR higher up in your organization. So when you're saying OKRs at the team-wide level, of course, you're not going to have any higher level OKRs to draft, but let's imagine that, you've got organization-wide OKRs. Now you're going to, teams or sub-teams. You can draft the OKRs for those teams or sub-teams based on the organization-wide drafts. This helps build some alignment across your team so you know that everybody's goals really build up to organization-wide goals. One of the challenges of this is that you want to make sure that people really feel bought in. They see and they care about their team's contribution to these organization-wide results. So let's contrast this with a bottom-up objective and key result. And this is an objective and or a set of key results that originates from some individual or a team lower down in your organization, sort of based on their own creativity. So this can be a real opportunity for some innovative ideas to come out. And definitely as a leader, you should be open to hearing about potential objectives and key results from your team members. The challenge of bottom-up OKRs is making sure that they're aligned. So one of your filters is let's hear all of these different bottom-up OKR ideas, but let's only commit to those that have some very clear alignment to objectives and or key results that are higher up within our organization. In reality, both of these are important. And there should be a balance between OKRs that come top down versus OKRs that are created from your team bottom. Another important concept is that we need to sequence our OKR drafting process to enable us to really align objectives and key results at different levels. So you typically start with your highest level objective and key result first, these organization-wide OKRs. And then you draft OKRs for the teams and the sub-teams below that sequentially. So for example, maybe if we say, okay, we're going to use the month of really December to early January to set all of these objectives and key results. We're going to set, our highest level OKRs, maybe roughly the 1st of December. That'll be our deadline. Then we're going to set the next level down, maybe the 15th of December. Maybe we'll set the next level down by the 1st of January, and then we'll start tracking progress there. So this is just an example, but be sure to sequence the timing of your drafting process to give each of your teams time to think about the OKRs that are higher within your organization relative to them, and then create thoughtful OKRs that can be the basis for any teams or individuals below them in your organization's hierarchy. Finally, there's a similar approach to communicating these OKR drafts. So just as you stagger the drafting process, you should have communication steps or communication milestones after each of those. So maybe we set these top level OKRs from our leadership team, and we share those out in all staff meetings. So everybody in the organization is sort of below those OKRs. Everybody should know them. Then we have department leads who, are working on drafting their OKRs for their departments. And then we have communication about those within departmental meetings following that. Then maybe we have sub teams that are drafting OKRs, and they have team level meetings following that. So just keep in mind that however you define your OKRs, whatever level, you should have some meetings, some venue for discussion where you get to share those out and also make sure that everybody has the chance to ask questions. So let's talk through a few examples of this. First, we'll share an example of a top-down cascade of OKRs. And let's imagine, just for the sake of this example, let's imagine that we're running a bunch of car dealerships. So Maybe we say, hey, organization wide, we want to become the leading electric car dealership in the state of California, and we define these key results for this. That's an org-wide OKR. Now, each of these, subsequent OKRs might become an objective. Each of these key results could become an objective for a team below. So, for example, our objective is make up 55% of all electric car sales in California by Q4. That's an org-wide key result. That becomes the objective or one of the objectives for the sales team. They define key results under it. So maybe they say, one of the things we need to do is implement monthly sales promotions starting in March. Okay, so then let's have the team that's working on promotions have that become their objective. And then they define key results under that. So that's one way that this cascade can work, where the key results for a team higher up become the objective for a team farther down your org hierarchy. Key results can also cascade across teams. There can be cross-team objectives and key results, and it could look like this. So let's say we've got an objective of implement this particular tool at Workday for HR information management. That's something that our entire operations team is working towards. And then we have key results for this, sort of milestones for this. So we have to define requirements. We have to configure the thing. We have to migrate legacy data. Maybe this first task, these defined requirements, needs to sit with the end users of this tool, the human resources team. So that becomes one of their objectives. And then they define key results under that. Like we're going to define requirements for this one area first, then this other area. Let's imagine that these other two key results, they really need to sit with our information technology team. So these two become objectives for the information technology team, and then they set key results under it. This whole cascade doesn't have to sit within one team. And there should be some logical connection between any of these objectives lower down in your hierarchy and objectives and key results higher up in your hierarchy. One trap I'll mention here before sharing anything else, definitely be careful about tying your objectives and key results to compensation or your performance review process. The reason for that is that if you have money tied to objectives and key results, well, that incentivizes completing those objectives and key results. It also incentivizes really sandbagging those objectives, setting goals that are almost always easy to reach instead of setting any kind of stretch goals. So most of the research around OKR suggests that you actually don't tie compensation to goal achievement or lack thereof, because it won't encourage you to set goals that are true stretches that will help your team. It also might prevent an honest analysis of what are the priorities here, skewing to those priorities that are more easily accomplished, and maybe those really hard priorities or hard paths that are really critical for your organization's success. So as we've done in the past, I wanted to share the sort of crawl, walk, run progression in terms of alignment. We talked about the top-down versus bottom-up OKRs. Typically, when you're starting, the majority of your OKRs are top-down. They're set from higher levels of the organization, and you define team and sub-team OKRs based on those higher level OKRs. As you get more and more advanced with this, you'll have more of a mix between top-down and bottom-up OKRs. Another thing you can play with are the levels of organization for your objectives and key results. So as you start, it might make sense to maybe just have a couple levels. You have the organization-wide level and the department, or the department level and the team level. As you get more advanced, you'll want to think about having objectives and key results set for every level of team among your teams. So for some organizations, that's just two levels. Like we have organization-wide, and then we have particular teams for different areas. Large organizations will have many different levels of teams. You can also even consider going all the way down to having individual level objectives and key results set, where different individuals on a team then will name what are their most important objectives and key results that roll up to team success. But you shouldn't start there. You should start by defining objectives and key results for maybe just a couple different levels of working teams within your organization. So I hope that helps define some of the things you want to think about when aligning OKRs across your team. We have one more video left, and I hope you'll join us to wrap up the discussion around objectives and key results. Thanks again.